The Milwaukee Bucks winning streak is up to 5 after another dominant performance from Giannis Antetokounmpo during the Milwaukee Bucks 142 to 129 victory over the Washington Wizards. This was a game where was optional, but Giannis scored 42 points on 20 of 23 shooting from the field. That's 87%. He grabbed 13 rebounds and he dished out 8 assists. We're going to break down all the action from tonight's win, plus look ahead a little bit to Wednesday night's game against the Boston Celtics on today's episode of Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Appreciate you tuning in, and thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of the day. I'm your host, Camille Davis. You can catch me weekly on the Technical File podcast, as well as Cheesehead TV's Carry the G and MKE. And joining me, as always, is the founder of BrewHoop.com and longtime voice of the pod, Frank Madden. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. And we're going to get started talking about this game. The Milwaukee Bucks have improved to 10-4 on the season in a game, like I mentioned, where defense was quite optional. The Wizards came out with a 13-5 lead, and then the Bucks went on a run to take the lead in the first quarter. And it just seemed that throughout this game, whenever the Bucks appeared to get some separation, the Wizards would respond some way, somehow, some shape, some form. After the first quarter, the Wizards were down by 4 points. They were down by 5 at halftime. But coming to third quarter, entering to that fourth, they were only down by 2. And the Wizards actually took 108-107 lead with about 10 minutes left in the fourth before the Bucks responded with a big 35-16 run. And then the benches came in and we got some garbage time minutes from some guys. But I definitely want to hear from you, Frank, about some of your biggest takeaways from this game, because, I mean, to me, the biggest one is our guy Giannis. Like, let me put the player of the game graphic for our guy. 42 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists. This is coming off of another 40-point game that he just had against the Mavericks. Like, Giannis has been doing some outlandish things over the last few games since that Pacers game. Really, his last 6 games since he missed that Toronto game. So the Bucks' last 7, Giannis' last 6, including tonight. Giannis is averaging 37 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 6 assists, while he's shooting 71% from the field. And when looking at tonight's game in itself, as I mentioned, Giannis shot 87% from the field, a super efficient 40-burger. Giannis tallied his 3rd game ever with 40 points on 85% or better shooting. And now he only trails Wilt Chamberlain's 4 games of the same criteria by just 1, according to Stat Mamba. And anytime that you're close to breaking a Wilt Chamberlain record, it should go to show just how ridiculous your performance has been.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like after the Mavericks game on Saturday, you know, we obviously talked about Giannis' performance, but I feel like we didn't celebrate maybe it quite enough, right? There was a lot going on in that game. And look, you know, sometimes we just like to say it, right? Like, why do we podcast every day, Camille? Why podcasting after a regular season game against the Washington Wizards, who are trash? You know, why do we put ourselves through this, Camille? You're gonna have to edit a podcast and like do stuff after we stop talking. This is why we do it, Camille, because Giannis Antetokounmpo, not only 42 points, but 20 of 23 shooting.
Crazy.
2 of his misses, he just rebounded immediately and scored on. So basically he took, 21, basically had 21 possessions tonight. And he scored on 20 of them, which, I mean, again, like, he hit a couple nice jumpers, right? He hit kind of that, like, going to his left shoulder, which is the harder turnaround shoulder to turn to as a righty. He hit kind of a corkscrewing turnaround, I think, in the second quarter. And then we saw him hit a banker turnaround, like bank shot at one point, which, I mean, again, I often refer to those baseline jumpers as kind of like glory shots, glamour shots, a little bit like, whatever. But when you're feeling yourself like he was tonight, he has been hitting those at a decent clip. And yeah, I don't know. Tonight was just a night that everything was working for him. And again, though, I think the main thing, yes, he had a couple jumpers. The chemistry with Chris Middleton was great. Dame threw a ball over the top to him again, which, we've talked about how, to me, that's like the number one indicator that Dame and Giannis are getting closer and closer to an idealized sort of partnership, is when Dame knows, like, Jesus, throw it up there. I'm just going to throw it up there and he'll catch it and he'll put it in. But the pick and roll chemistry with Chris, who was great tonight, passed Sidney Moncrief for 4th all time in scoring. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Was really good. And I mean, the 2 dunks on Gafford, I thought, were probably like the most emblematic, right? The first one, he takes a screen from Brook. This is a 7-foot, 250-pound human being snaking a pick and roll, and then just literally, like, turning his hips and going around a 7-foot shot blocker and just yamming on him with one hand. I mean, who his size has ever like made plays like that? Nobody. And then in second half, he's in a more traditional role. He's a screener. Nice chemistry with Chris as usual. Chris finds him going down the middle lane, and he just goes up and just powers right through Daniel Gafford, right? Gafford got a piece of that ball, and just too much power from Giannis. He puts it down over the top of him. And so, yeah, it was just another one of those just freak of nature type games from Giannis. Not a single 3-pointer taken.
Not
Beautiful,
mad at
Giannis. Beautiful. Just, whatever. And the funny part too is, I mean, these last 2 games, 5 free throws on Saturday night, 6 free throws tonight. Wish he could have made more than 2, but they got 2 offensive rebounds out of that too. I think Bobby had a tip in on one of them. So hey, they got 4 points at least out of those free throw trips. So yeah, it was just the kind of performance that, again, yes, there are guys that score 40 points in the NBA, and it happens, but the number of people that can do it in the way that he just did it, it's one guy. It's one guy that can do what he did. And as you said, you pointed out the numbers. He's been on, a heater of late, and his, lo and behold, his season stats now, he's up over 30 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, close to 5 assists per game. Yeah, the free throw percentage, wish it would be a little bit higher, but 62% from the field, that's a career high. And I've been trying to update the true shooting numbers to see where he's at. He came into this game at 63%, which is right at where he was in his kind of MVP, kind of career best years. And so he's now going to be above that as well. So he'll probably be 64, maybe 65% after what he did tonight. So yeah, he's playing just at a super high level. And I'm just, we can talk about the Celtics game towards the end here, but a fascinating measuring stick, not just for the Bucks, but Giannis, who has had some great moments against the Celtics, but is also in the last year or two, like, has had his share of struggles. And so we'll see. We'll talk a little bit about what might be in store on Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, again, you could say it's a trap game, whatever, but let's just say last year, I remember the Bucks going to Washington, and they had a late season game where was pretty much a track meet like this. You could feel like they just sort of felt like, you know what, we're just going to outscore these dudes. We're not going to really put in the same level of defensive effort we normally do. Difference this year is like, well, guys, like, it'd be nice if we knew that you could play high level defense, which
right before you take off.
Exactly. So again, it would have been nicer to see a better defensive effort tonight, but whatever. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. I think, again, sort of sometimes you get these games where you can score a crap load of points, and 142 points later, Bucks, what are they now at? They were at, I think, 261 or something points in the last 2 games. Now they add 142 on here, so they've put up a cool 403 points or whatever it is the last 3 games. So if the defense is going to be mediocre to worse than mediocre, they're going to need that offense to be gangbusters, and it's at least shaping up to be that. So again, thinking about that Celtics game, hopefully they can keep doing this sort of thing in Boston as well. But really fun, an annoying game in some ways, but
a little bit, yeah.
With the performances from Giannis and Chris in particular, still ended up being pretty fun.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Chris, because I definitely want to talk a little bit more about him. But as you were talking, it made me think of something else that stood out to me from this game, and looking at just the box score in itself. Like, this was the first game where the Bucks' new big 3 with Giannis, Dame, and Chris led the team in scoring. Now, as we just mentioned, Giannis did a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes just to the scoring totals, but Dame had 22, Chris had 18. All of the Bucks starters were in double-digit scoring, and then Bobby came off the bench and added in, I believe, a cool 17 as well in this game. So you love to see that. And one thing I love about the big 3's performance tonight, outside of the scoring, was also just the fact that they were moving the ball around as well. The three of them all led the team in assists as well. Giannis had 8, as we mentioned, and both Chris and Dame had 7 assists. So while they were out there, not only were they looking for their own shots, but they were also setting up their teammates, which we love to see. Also love to see and talk about FanDuel. So listen, it's Victory Monday here in the great state of Wisconsin after the Packers got one over the Chargers yesterday in Lambeau Field. So make sure that you score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sport book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Again, I want to make sure you heard me. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So make sure you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Again, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Camille, question for you as a Packer fan here, fellow Packer fan. And I couldn't have this conversation with Kane because he was. By the way, did you know Kane was originally a Texans fan? That was like his random.
That is so random.
Yeah, he was like an Andre Johnson fan when he first started following the NFL, and so he was a Texans fan. Very strange. Maybe he's a Texans fan again. There's finally some hope.
Some good vibes there, yeah.
Finally, some good vibes. No, but I was going to say, have you been tempted at all to vote for the Packer tank? Obviously, they just won a game, so maybe you're feeling differently, even if you did. But where are you on sort of Packers and the draft and what you want out of this season, given the slow start?
Yeah, so for me, this will be real quick, Bucks fans, but really quick. It's a developmental season for me. So I looked at the season more so of just saying, like, are guys getting better over the course of the season? If so, the season is a win for me in my books. But where the Packers are, I mean, they could sneak into that wild card if things go right. And they got a big matchup on Thanksgiving. So this is really just a big week for Wisconsin sports fans because, as mentioned, the Packers have the Lions on Thanksgiving and the Bucks have the Celtics on the day before Thanksgiving this Wednesday. So there's going to be a lot to talk about. And with that, I want everybody to make sure that you check out Locked On Sports today. Locked On Network has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports today is here for you with 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And as mentioned, I'm sure there will be some Wisconsin sports talk on there with the big games that we have coming up this week. And I cannot wait for either of those games. But still taking a look here at this Wizards game, as I mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit more just about what else stood out to us from this game outside of Giannis. And I mentioned the playmaking that we saw from our big three, and you mentioned it earlier as well. Chris making more history again. We discussed it on November 13th, so the everydayers remember that conversation when he passed Michael Redd for 5th on the Bucks all-time scoring list. And today he moved into 4th on that list, passing Hall of Famer Sidney Moncrief with his 13th point in the third quarter. Now Chris Middleton has 11,600 career points as a Milwaukee Buck. And next up for him is big dog Glenn Robinson with 12,010 points. Also, Chris played a season-high 23 minutes tonight. And one thing that stood out to me is he took a few bumps. Early in the game, he got like rolled up on, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, please get up. Then he tried to take a charge, and he fell really hard, like rolled over himself, looking like a wrestler taking a big bump or something like that. And he got right back on up and just kept rolling. And I was really pleased to see him take a couple of bumps and get back up and then still play a season high 23 minutes tonight, which might have been more if the game was a little bit closer, but he was able to come out after that 23 mark. Mentioned already, the Bucks had 6 guys in double-digit scoring. Brook, I thought, had a pretty good game tonight, especially around the rim. The Wizards just didn't have the size to really compete with the Bucks, with Giannis and with Brook. And the other thing that was interesting to me was just that there was 15 minutes for AJ Green tonight and only 1 for Andre Jackson Jr., which was a shock to me after seeing the Rooks playing time, be pretty consistent around that 14, 15-minute mark over the last few.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of that. As I was watching the game, I was like, wait, did I miss an injury or something like that? Is
Right.
he, not able to play? And, I think it was probably just a matter of them wanting to give a little more run to AJ Green. We've obviously seen a little bit more of him over the past week and hit a couple of big shots in that Mavs game. So maybe just a way of saying like, hey, AJ Green, yeah. The other thing too is like, I mean, AJ Green, he works. He generally is in the right spots on defense. His physical limitations, unfortunately, he's like a number of other Bucks now in the backcourt in terms of just like no matter how much he competes, he just has some limitations. But he is a coach's son. I mean, just look at him, like, blonde corn-fed dude from Iowa. Of course he's a coach's son, right? He shoots the shit out of the ball. Like you could have predicted that his dad was a basketball coach, right? But I do think that probably has something to do with the fact that, defensively, again, his issue is not effort. It's not because he just like doesn't have a clue. It's because he just physically can't compete that easily. But especially on this team with the number of other guys who fall into the same camp, I think that shooting is going to give him opportunities. Didn't help tonight. I think I'm gonna go on a limb and say that AJ going 1 for 4 in 15 minutes, just the 2 points probably opens the door for Andre to come back into the lineup on Wednesday, and I think you're going to need him more in that game anyway, just because the Celtics and the size they have, and just again what they can do offensively. Again, great team defensively as well. So who knows? Maybe you need an AJ Green, zone buster type of shooting performance at some point as well. But hopefully we'll see Andre again on Wednesday, because I think again against the likes of Tatum, Brown, Drew, right? I think a guy like him is probably going to be needed. So we'll see. But I agree. I thought that was kind of the one rotational thing from Adrian Griffin that kind of raised my eye a little bit. But yeah, I mean, certainly offensively, a lot of nice numbers in the box score to look at. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing with Brooke. I mean, the Wizards, I don't know if you have the paint numbers in front of you, but they got an absolute
84.
ton of. I mean,
Season
that's
for the Bucks. Too many.
Yeah. I mean, that was absurd. And again, it's like, okay, is this a Brooke Lopez problem? Well, I mean, Brooke had 5 blocks. He was a plus 13, 16 points on 12 shots, 9 rebounds. I mean, I think he actually played pretty well. Didn't have any fouls. But this is the thing, right? Like, if you've got guys who are good at floaters, i.e. Tyus Jones, Jordan Poole, it can be a good floater guy as well. If you have guys who are comfortable getting into that, 8 to 12 foot range and just putting floaters up over a retreating big man, then you're going to be able to potentially have nights like this. And I thought the Bucks, again, like, is the problem Brooke Lopez, or is the problem the guys playing defense, getting over screens, not getting, enough pressure on the ball handlers, right? Who are you going to go with, Camille? Do you think you're going to go with the guy who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year, or do you think you're going to go with the likes of Dame and Malik Beasley?
Definitely going that perimeter rotation right there. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that just sort of underscores you're going to have some vulnerability there, right? And again, if this was, a super close game in the last few minutes, could you take Brooke off the floor, go smaller, switch everything? Like, yeah, I mean, you obviously have different things you can do. I thought it was interesting. Giannis was like very frisky on the perimeter against Kyle Kuzma. Like they dapped each other up after the game. So apparently there's like some, kind of friendly something or other there. But like Giannis really got after it. Thought there were a few times where Giannis was going for, pokeaways and some stuff that again maybe isn't the most fundamentally sound defense from Giannis, but he was definitely engaged. And I don't know, Kuzma is just like a weird player. Like I'm shocked he was 10 for 15 tonight, which kind of blew my mind. He bricked a couple threes, and I was just like, oh, he's having one of those random Kyle Kuzma brick nights. Then he ends up hitting 10 out of 15. So what do I know? But yeah, I think defensively, this was definitely one of those games that kind of highlights like, yeah, Bucks can give up a lot of points. And I don't know that, as much as things have been improved lately, have they solved their problems? I would say not. And conveniently, we get the best test possible. I mean, maybe Denver would be a better test, but I think for the purpose of the Bucks in the Eastern Conference, I think, the bar is the Boston Celtics right now. And thankfully, the bar is a little lower because they lost tonight in overtime to the Charlotte Hornets. Go Hornets, buzz, buzz. But yeah, Jason Tatum missing what could have been a tying free throw late. Drew Holiday missed 2 free throws that could have sealed the game. I have mixed emotions about that, Camille. I'm not rooting against Drew, but I don't want him to be good for the Celtics either.
I
So
understand that dilemma.
it's kind of a strange situation. But yeah. So I mean, again, have the Bucks been as good of a team, holistically as the Boston Celtics so far this season? I think you would say definitely not. Like some of the Celtics like lineup numbers are just beyond absurd with their best guys, but lo and behold, Boston 11-3, Philly 10-3, Bucks 10-4, right? So you, despite everything, you have a chance if you could go in and win in Boston, where the Celtics are 5-0. You could actually equal them in the standings. So again, I think a lot of that. To be honest, like at this point, I'm still in the mode of like just stack wins. Play better, right? Like I'm almost like not even like that stressed about the game, because I don't expect them to win on Wednesday. I think they certainly can, but I still think they're figuring things out. And I still think, they have another trade to make before the playoffs to shore up the defensive wing rotation. But yeah, I mean, it's this is we podcast every night because you might see these incredible Giannis games, but really we podcast every day because you build toward these games against like the Celtics, where, understandably people want to see it. There's the potential for a preview from, for playoff implications, things like that. So now we just have to hope that the Bucks play a lot better than they have in some of these other Celtics games we've seen in recent years, including that last game at home last year, which was, I mean, that was maybe the most anticipated game of the season. It had huge implications for the number 1 seed in the East. The Bucks were at home, and you could not have laid a bigger egg than they laid last year. So I'm not saying the bar is low for Bucks performances, but it has definitely tempered some of my expectations going into this. So, we'll see. But I'm excited still, right? I mean, that's why we do this, right? Because we're easily excited, and we never give up on the Bucks, no matter what they might do. But definitely some really encouraging signs.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, this is what we do it for. And I can't wait to dive in a little bit deeper about this upcoming Celtics matchup, because outside of the on-court product that we're going to get, hopefully a very entertaining game between two of the top teams in the East, there's also all the narratives around it as well, which you can't ignore going into a game of this magnitude, because that's part of the allure of watching it. But before we dig in a little bit into the rest of the games the Bucks have coming up for the rest of this month, especially that Celtics game on Wednesday, I first want to talk a little bit about Prize Picks. I personally love Prize Picks. I have a group of friends, and every so often we get together like, are you prize picking tonight? Because we all absolutely love that platform. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS, because it's just you against the numbers. So instead of trying to battle against thousands of other players, including all those different pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll in. And now with basketball season here, you can pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, which is a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, if the Bucks and the Packers were playing the same day, you could do a Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jordan or Romeo Dobbs at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. You might want to go under if that was Giannis, but you would have the option to do that. And Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy. So your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. And Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first time deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, Frank. As I mentioned, we have the Celtics up next for the Milwaukee Bucks, but I do just want to take a quick look at their upcoming schedule just to close out the month. We have the Celtics on Wednesday, and then the Bucks play every other day to end out the month. So you have the Celtics on Wednesday, then you have the Wizards again on Friday at home and an in-season tournament game. Then you have the Blazers on Sunday, the Heat on Tuesday, and the last group play in-season tournament game, which is in Miami. And then you finish out the month against the Bulls in Chicago. But we're taking a look most specifically at that Celtics matchup because, as I mentioned, in addition to the fact that it's two of the top teams in the East that will be seeing each other for the first time this season, there is a lot of narrative around this as well, given the fact that, Drew Holiday ended up being traded for Damian Lillard this summer, went to Portland, was sent from Portland all the way over to Boston, one of the places that I'm sure most Bucks fans were hoping that he did not land. So no matter how this season goes, the Bucks and the Celtics are pretty much tied into one another because of the fact that this Dame trade helped open the door for Drew to get to Boston. And there have been so many different conversations before the season started about which team was coming out on top, who was better, what's the rankings in the East. And as we're seeing things shake out, it's still the same three teams at the top of the East that we've seen for the last couple of years here with the Celtics, the Bucks, and the 76ers. But with the Celtics game coming on Wednesday, as you mentioned, Frank, the Celtics are coming off of an overtime loss to the Hornets. Go Buzz, Buzz. The Celtics had a 6-game win streak that was snapped tonight with this loss. And it should be mentioned that during this loss tonight, the Celtics did rest Al Horford and Derek White didn't play because of personal reasons. But Frank, just to close out the show here this week, how excited are you for this pre-Thanksgiving game matchup? And if the Bucks lose, will it ruin your holiday? I'm very curious about that as well. Perfect timing for Frank Madden Freeze fame. While I wait for Frank to come back into the picture here, I do just want to point out the fact that for myself, I am extremely excited for this upcoming Celtics game. Like I mentioned the narrative piece of this already, but in addition to that, seeing Drew Holiday play for the Celtics so far this season has just been one of those things where, like Frank mentioned, I want him to do good because I have so much love for Drew Holiday. Without Drew Holiday, the Bucks don't have a title. I understand that and I respect that. And I always love Drew for that reason. But you put him on the Celtics, which when it comes to teams that I have a problem with as a Bucks fan, where that beef is real, the Celtics is definitely one of them up there with the Miami Heat. And of course, the 76ers are in that mix as well. So coming up to this game before the holiday, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how these two teams shake out against each other because Boston has gotten off to the start of this season pretty fast. They've looked really good throughout the season so far. Meanwhile, as we've seen with the Bucks, they have struggled a lot throughout the season. We've had many conversations here on the show about the struggles the Bucks have faced, where we're wondering why schemes look the way they are, and things have just taken a little bit longer for things to come together for this Milwaukee Bucks team. And while it's still not perfect, we have been seeing signs of progress. So I'm looking forward to seeing the team that has come together pretty quickly in Boston going up against this team in Milwaukee here that's taken a little bit longer to come together. But Frank's back. Frank, I would love to get your opinion. How are you feeling about this Celtics game coming up here on Wednesday?
Well, we can't blame my home internet because I'm at my in-laws right now and it just really went out on me. So it must be my computer is just untrustworthy. One of the things I was thinking about is what are the matchups going to be, right? Because we've talked about Grant Williams is gone, Al Horford is not starting for the most part. I think tonight Horford didn't play at all.
Yep. Or Derek White.
Yeah, they started Sam Hauser, sort of in Derek White's spot. And they so their bench was O'Shea Brissett, Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard, and Svi Mihajlovic, right? So, I'm sure Bill Simmons would say like, oh, I like all those guys. Oh, Peyton Pritchard. Yeah. It's just like, yeah, okay, like that's yeah, whatever. So I think to me the interesting thing there is you have guys there that are not going to necessarily stretch the floor, right? And Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, he's kind of a next level floor stretcher compared to even a guy like Horford who shoots a high percentage, but has more of that kind of revolutionary war musket release that just takes a while to load up. Shout out to Matthew Dellavedova, the originator of the revolutionary war musket shot release. But I'm just really curious to see, obviously, if Horford plays, I think he's going to be pretty crucial as really the only kind of obvious defender against Giannis. But if he's not starting, I kind of wonder if Drew Holiday defends Giannis to start the game.
With
Just
Porzingis on Brook.
with Porzingis on Brook, and they kind of spare Tatum from having to defend nominally, like his power forward matchup. So I kind of wonder if he might do that. I think obviously Drew, we've seen him get the better of Damian Lillard, whatever it was 6 years ago in the playoffs, when they were both at prior destinations with Portland versus New Orleans. So I'm sure Drew on some level would love to just lock up Dame and just be like, really? This is the dude you traded me for when I wanted to stay in Milwaukee. God damn it. Love you, Drew. Still feel bad that he had to leave. But so I'm curious. I think if Derek White plays, I think it makes sense to put Derek White on Dame. If Derek White doesn't play, then I think Drew on Dame is the obvious kind of answer. But yeah, I'm just really curious kind of what the matchups look like. And again, like they have an awesome top six. And then after that, yeah, they can be things can get a little dicey. So my hope is the Bucks at least sort of shoot even with the Celtics. Again, we've seen the Bucks go cold in the playoffs against Boston. I just don't want to see another game where it's like the 3-point line decides it. I'd like to see, I think probably the most interesting thing would be if both teams have sort of an average 3-point shooting game, and then things come down to all the other stuff, right? We often talk about how much 3-point variance can kind of drive outcomes in the NBA game. So I don't know, whenever these big matchups, I just hope I hope 3-point shooting isn't what decides it, because to me that's a little less fun. Also, when you have Giannis, that's a little bit of a reason why to hope that things come down to other stuff. But I think, speaking of Giannis, I want to say it's been like 8 straight games going back to the playoffs a couple years ago where he's been held under 50% shooting against Boston, which I think is a very good bellwether for like how well they've defended him. I mean, Giannis, he's shooting 62% this season. He's always been, 55%-ish regular season score in terms of his field goal shooting. And I usually don't look at like raw field goal percentage, but when you're just looking at box scores, it's an easy kind of thing to look at, right? Like, well, did you shoot above or below 50%? If you're honest, if you're shooting below 50%, they're doing something right. And so Giannis has had some weird games in there too. Like there was the game that they won last year when Boston like rested everybody. Remember that, which was like way harder than it should have been. I think it was an OT game, and he was under 50% that one, even though he ended up scoring 30 plus. So yeah, I don't know. He's obviously in a great form right now. So I'm just really hoping that he has a monster game and makes hopefully Boston feel like, man, we lost something defensively with the trades we made this summer, especially in how they can defend Giannis. But again, they have, especially if White's healthy, between White, Drew, being really good perimeter defenders that also can defend up, I think a lot better than certainly the average shooting guard. I mean, they're two guys that can, switch as well as anybody from the guard position. And, obviously Tatum's, if nothing else, a very good help defender and a really solid individual defender. And Jaylen Brown, probably the worst out of that group, but still, I mean, physically he has the tools to compete. And Porzingis has been, a really good shot blocker for them early in the season. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it shakes out. Definitely a game, I think, especially with Porzingis, I kind of wonder, like, are you going to be able to keep Brook on the floor in kind of crunch time and late in game scenarios, or do you have to go a little bit smaller and kind of force them to make some decisions about where they play Porzingis? Because, look, Porzingis he's going to stretch you out. So I think, yes, he can definitely take advantage of small guys on the block, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know that you want to put Giannis on him just because then Giannis is far away from the basket. But you can always do Giannis and then switch a lot and kind of dare Porzingis to have to beat you from like the high post. Because again, he's not going to like drive to the basket or put dudes under the rim, right? He's going to want to shoot mid-range jumpers. And again, that's not the worst outcome, especially given the Bucks and the way they've been playing defense. So yeah, I'm really curious to see kind of how it is. I was watching the end of a couple of their recent games against the Grizzlies as well, which they almost gave that game away against the shorthanded Grizzlies. Kind of their late game offense still feels very like kind of take turns-ish, a lot of Tatum ISO. They don't, for as good as they are, they don't have kind of that obvious pick and roll sort of partnership, pick and roll optionality, that a team like the Bucks or, Philly with Maxey or Denver with Murray, Jokic, et cetera, that those teams have. So again, maybe that is, can kind of the Achilles heel that can be exploited. And certainly if you're the Bucks, the way things have been going late in games, you'd say, hey, if we can just keep this game close and just make it kind of a crunch time offense game and just say, all right, let's see if you can keep up with Dame and Giannis down the stretch. I'd say that would be a pretty good place to be. I'd happily have it come down to that. Again, if that's the way the playoffs, the East Finals or something comes down to, that could be a pretty fun playing if you're an NBA fan this year. So
cannot wait.
Yeah.
Cannot wait. It should be a really fun game. And in addition to that, ahead of the game, Justin and I will be previewing that Celtics game a little bit more in depth as well on Wednesday. So look out for that episode as well. I'm trying to see if we can get a 3-person post-game booth after that Celtics game, just given how big of a game that is. Get Frank in here with myself and Justin to cover that one. So that should be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming up on Locked On Bucks this week. So before we get out of here, I want to remind you again that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So make sure that you checked out Locked On Sports on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We're going to get out of here. And again, cannot wait to see what happens next with the Celtics, especially after coming off of a game where defense was kind of optional tonight against the Washington Wizards. So hopefully defense is not optional against the Celtics on the Bucks side at the very least. So for Frank and myself, we're going to get out of here. Again, hope to hear from you guys soon. Take care. And thanks for tuning in to Locked On Bucks.